The explosion was so loud, soldiers instinctively covered their ears before the trigger was even pulled. A massive blast. Dust everywhere. And the entire battlefield now knew exactly where the shot came from. It looked like the worst anti-tank weapon ever designed. Too loud, too heavy, impossible to hide. But the real reason Britain kept using it shocked everyone, because this ugly metal pipe could stop a Soviet tank column cold. This is the story of the Wombat, the loudest tank killer of the Cold War. Imagine Europe in the 1960s, NATO. Commanders believed one thing above all else. If war started, Soviet tanks would flood through Western Europe. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Moving fast across open terrain, infantry units needed something powerful enough to stop them. But traditional anti-tank guns had a huge problem. They were heavy-wheeled. World War II anti-tank cannons needed trucks, crews, and time to set up, and in a fast-moving Cold War battlefield, time meant death. Missiles were coming. But early guided weapons had issues. Wires snapped, electronics failed, and cold weather guidance. Systems struggled in cities. So the British Army needed something different, something simple, something powerful, something that would work. Every time, what they got was unlike anything else in the mid-1960s. British soldiers first saw it mounted on the back of a Land Rover. It looked strange. Long tube, lightweight frame, no recoil system, no heavy armor shield. And when it fired, the blast was deafening. The weapon was called the L6 Wombat, a 120mm recoilless anti-tank gun. But the design idea actually began during World War II. British engineer proposed a radical concept. Instead of absorbing recoil, eliminate it completely. When the gun fired, gases blasted out the back. This balanced the forward force of the shell. The result: no recoil. That meant the weapon could be much lighter than traditional guns, and that changed everything. Now infantry units could carry massive anti-tank firepower without needing huge artillery pieces. But that wasn't the most surprising part. The real reason this weapon terrified tank crews came from its ammunition. Most anti-tank weapons try to punch through armor. The Wombat didn't. Instead, it used something uniquely British: HESH, high explosive squash head. When the shell hit a tank, it didn't penetrate, it flattened. The explosives spread across the armor like soft clay. Then, a split second later, it detonated. And what happened next changed everything. The blast sent a shockwave through the metal armor inside the tank. The inner wall shattered. Deadly metal fragments exploded inward. Like shrapnel, the armor itself became the weapon. Crew members were hit by their own tank. No penetration needed. No hole required. Just one impact. And the crew compartment turned into chaos. This meant the Wombat could destroy heavily armored vehicles, using physics instead of brute force. But there was another clever feature. Because the shell moved slower than normal anti-tank rounds, aiming could be difficult, so engineers added something unusual: a spotting rifle, mounted on top of the main barrel. A .50 caliber rifle, fired special tracer rounds. The gunner fired small shots first when he saw the flash hit the target. He pulled the main trigger. The big round landed in exactly the same spot. Simple, reliable, deadly. Accurate, and soldiers loved it. But the Wombat wasn't something soldiers carried. It weighed hundreds of kilograms instead. It was mounted on vehicles, most commonly the back of a Land Rover. 3 soldiers operated it: commander, gunner, driver. They would drive to a firing position, unload the weapon, aim, fire, then immediately leave. Because firing the Wombat created a massive problem, it revealed everything. The blast kicked up. Dust. The sound echoed for kilometers. The backblast shot flames behind the weapon. Everyone knew where the shot came from. Enemy artillery, tanks, machine guns, could respond within seconds. So doctrine was simple. Shoot and move, shoot and move, shoot and move. Crews trained to fire one round, then relocate immediately. It wasn't stealthy. It was brute force ambush warfare. And in that role, the Wombat was terrifying. Veterans later described the sound as unbelievable. Some compared it to a rocket launch. Others said it was the loudest weapon they ever fired. The backblast danger zone extended hundreds of meters behind the gun. Anyone standing there wouldn't survive. But soldiers accepted the danger because the payoff was massive. Firepower the Wombat could destroy. Tanks, bunkers, fortified buildings, infantry positions. It even fired canister rounds, turning it into a giant shotgun. Steel balls or darts spread across the battlefield, devastating at close range. Enemy troops who heard the blast knew something powerful had just fired, and morale dropped instantly. But here's the strange part. Despite all this power, the Wombat rarely saw real combat because it was designed for a war that never came. The Wombat's true mission was simple. Stop Soviet tanks. If the Warsaw Pact attacked Western Europe, British infantry would deploy along likely routes, roads, valleys, city streets. Ambush points, Wombat teams would wait. Hidden when tanks appeared, they would fire once, then relocate. The weapon was perfect for urban defense. No guidance, wires to snag, no L. Electronics to fail. Instant impact. Missiles, by contrast, needed time to guide onto the target. The Wombat shell hit almost immediately, and it cost far less. Missiles. Wombat ammunition was cheap. That meant soldiers could train more, fire more, and rely on the weapon. So even when guided missiles entered service, some units kept the Wombat, because sometimes simpler was better. Crews knew its weaknesses: heavy, loud, revealed position instantly. But they also knew its strengths: massive firepower, mechanical reliability. No electronics, no batteries, no wires. It worked in cold. Whether it worked in cities, it worked in mud. And most importantly, one hit could stop a tank. That confidence mattered in an ambush. Soldiers only needed one shot, and the Wombat delivered. By the late Cold War, guided missiles improved. They became lighter, more accurate, more portable. Gradually, units began replacing recoilless rifles, but the Wombat didn't disappear overnight. Some formations kept it for years, especially in urban defense scenarios, because even modern missiles couldn't demolish bunkers as effectively, and they cost far more per shot eventually, though. Technology moved on, missiles became dominant, and the Wombat slowly retired. Today, the Wombat sits quietly in museums. No thunder, no blast, just a strange metal tube on display. But during the Cold War, it represented something powerful. A simple weapon, built to stop an armored invasion. It was loud, heavy, impossible to hide, yet soldiers trusted it, because when the moment came, it would work. And if Soviet tanks had ever rolled into Western Europe, the first thing they might have heard was a deafening blast, and the Wombat firing back